Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Today I'm joined by Wheeler.
Thank you for having me, Serge. It's great to be here.
Unfortunately, no Nelly today due to a scheduling issue, but hopefully he'll be here for part 2. Welcome to our set review of March of the Machine, singular. A reminder for our podcast, we don't talk about every single card. We only talk about the cards that we think are relevant to the format, things that'll make an impact, or things that we think will generate a lot of comments if we didn't talk about them.
Things that you think might be relevant to the format.
Yeah. In addition to that, we have picked a couple of the spicier Commander deck cards to also include because they are legal in our format.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be covering white, blue, black, and an artifact today. Take a guess which one it is. Let's see. You know, maybe they'll watch the end and they cheat, but I'm curious how many people think what one artifact we talk about.
Skittering Surveyor?
Adam Savadan somewhere just shivered.
Yeah.
All right, without further ado, oh, that's not true. I got to talk about our sponsor, you, over at the Patreon at patreon.com/LoneyReadyRun. It's your reason that we can do absolutely all of this. All right, without further ado, let's get into the set review. Wheeler, start us off.
Archangel Elspeth. 2 and 2 white for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker and Elspeth. +1, create a 1/1 white soldier token with lifelink. -2, put 2 1/1 counters on target creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types and gains flying permanently. And -6, return all non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. 4 mana Planeswalkers, huh? Well, see you later.
Oh, really?
Well, not for everyone.
Yeah.
But
That's just the reality these days, eh? 4 mana Planeswalker, nah?
Well, Planeswalkers are in an interesting spot where creatures have gotten, obviously, a lot better.
Yeah.
Planeswalkers have kind of chilled out. The ones that are pushed are the ones that have certain specifications, like the artifact-related ones, or if it really digs into a card subtype.
Sure.
But Archangel Elspeth also just kind of suffers from being a 4 mana white Planeswalker, where you already have Gideon Ally of Zendikar, Elspeth Sun's Champion, even Elspeth Knight Errant.
I was going to say, do you not like this 4 mana Elspeth compared to old 4 mana Elspeth? It's close.
Well, old 4 mana Elspeth starts at 5. Like you play it, and both abilities are plussing.
Yes, you're not minusing to jump a creature like you do for the old Elspeth, correct?
And the lifelink part is neat to have on these tokens, but also old Elspeth just kills people so quickly or threatens to end the game. And even then, it's kind of outclassed. Ultimately, I think Archangel Elspeth here is just outclassed entirely. Just play better 4-drops. Play ones that don't get hit by Spell Pierce, unless their name is like Minskin Boo or Tezzeret Agent of Bolas.
Yeah, very fair. All right, next up, we have the Boonbringer Valkyrie. Another 5 mana angel in white. 3 white for a 4/4 angel warrior. This one has backup 1, so it's the first time we're going to talk about backup today. It's an ability that when it enters the battlefield, put N +1/+1 counters on target creature. In this case, it's backup 1, so 1 +1/+1 counter. And then if that's another creature, it also gains all of the following abilities until end of turn. And the Boonbringer Valkyrie has flying, first strike, and lifelink. So this either enters as a 5/5, or it makes another creature get a +1/+1 counter and all those abilities.
Until end of turn.
Until end of turn. The +1/+1 counter stays, but the rest goes away afterwards. I'm very on the fence about this card. That's a big swing. Like when it comes down, that's a big swing. It's a big stabilizer, but also we don't play Baneslayer in our format anymore.
Oh, whoa. What do you mean we?
When was the last time you sleeved up Baneslayer?
2022. Last year.
Okay.
Ancient Tomb mana, Surge.
Wait, are you saying big white or medium white is a thing now?
What do you mean now? I do, in all seriousness, I do think that medium white, there are a lot of white archetypes that are kind of unexplored because everybody gravitates to Death and Taxes.
Yes.
But as we've seen in, other formats, Legacy, Modern, and certainly Standard for the past couple of years, not that it's the exact same thing, but white has gotten a lot of tools that let it grind, draw cards.
Oh, absolutely.
Or, just it has redundancy of big idiots that you play off a Soul Ring and they're dead. If they can't answer it, they're
Oh,
dead.
absolutely.
So Angel Stompy is something that actually popped up a bit, albeit during a time where Mana Crypt was criminally underpointed.
Sure.
But it's still good. In fact, it's gotten a little bit better because so many more decks are board-based.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, this kills Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
It survives a lot of removal.
I mean, the disadvantage it has compared to big red or medium red is no haste.
Yeah.
And that's a massive disadvantage, which I guess the backup does help you kind of fight through a little. It like gives you that immediate board impact instead of having to wait a turn to untap.
Yeah, it's certainly not as, oh my god, I'm dead, as like a big red deck would have you believe. But also Swords to Plowshares is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that it's effectively a Baneslayer Angel, but without the line of text.
The weird, very rarely relevant protections.
Pro dragons, pro demons.
Yeah.
But in a world with Murktide regions running around and like more reanimator decks popping up, it might
it's not dead.
Yeah.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
So overall, this is fine in one deck, medium white if you want to sleeve it up.
Yeah, medium white. Or big white if you're feeling nasty.
All right, let's talk about our first commander card here. Take it away, Wheeler.
Chivalric Alliance. 1 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. And then pay 2, discard a card, create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. So kind of related to the conversation we just had where white has these card advantage tools and they're a bit trickier and more resilient to get into more of a mid-range deck. I think this card's actually pretty great. There's a card from 1 that we kind of missed called Staff of the Storyteller, which is like a 2-mana white artifact that when it ETBs, you create a 1/1 flying creature token and says whenever a creature token is created, it comes into play with it gets a lore counter or some weird thematic counter.
Okay.
And then you can pay 1 and tap to remove a counter and draw a card.
Oh, interesting.
And that's making waves in Legacy.
Really?
It benefits from having multiple copies, but still in a world with, Canlander, there's a lot of incidental token generation.
Oh, yeah.
So more white card draw. More white card draw that can find its home in something like, mono white Martyr Proc, aka Ruin Your Evening.
Are you playing this in Martyr Proc?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
That's a deck that can attack with exactly 2 creatures, make your opponent...
when are you ever going to have creatures in that deck?
You have so many creatures that are so bad.
They're so bad. You don't care to swing into anything?
No, because your opponent doesn't gain anything from it. They just either bump uglies, get in a spot where they might get blown up by a swords. But also you can just generate creatures, 2 and discard a card for an instant speed 2/2 vigilance.
Sure.
Not bad.
Now, let's be honest. You're the only person on the planet who's ever going to play Ruin Your Evening. I hope.
Interesting. Yeah. Tell that to my round 1 opponent at the face-to-face Canadian Highlander Nationals.
No.
Yeah.
All right. I apologize
locked me out. It was great. But
do you like this in mono white aggro? Or maybe D&T in place of an anthem. You know what I mean? Because instead of pressure, you're getting redundancies, maybe not the right word.
So the white weenie every 1-drop possible aggro deck, I like this as well. Because it pulls kind of like a Call of the Bloodline, instant speed make tokens, cash in your
turns
excess
your
lands.
dead lands later. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a card that I would ultimately just don't sleep on it. If you like white aggressive things, then, or even just white dirtily throw your Suntail Hawks at them kind of decks. I think this is worth looking at. And it's got great flavor text. I dub thee Sir Hellraker for now. They're knighting a dragon.
Oh, I like that. All right. Next up, we have the Dusk Legion Duelist. This is a 2/2 vampire soldier for 1 and white. It has vigilance, and whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put onto it, draw a card, but this ability triggers only once each turn. I like this. This is just a really solid vanilla creature with all upside, which is fantastic. And Vampires is a pretty legit deck. In particular, 3-color vampires with a little bit of a white splash for some of the Sorens, for the, what's the 3/1 2-drop that you can pay life to protect itself?
3/1 2-drop?
Yeah, it's 1 white.
Oh, a Danto Vanguard.
Right? That card slaps, as well as the 1 white enchantment that comes in and then eventually turns into a land, right?
Legion's Landing.
This is, Dusk Legion Duelist is another very strong reason
Yeah.
to maybe consider putting white in a vampire deck. So yeah, really great white creature for, I don't know, maybe not quite D&T, maybe not enough there, but it'd be fine.
It checks off 3 boxes in
Yep.
that vampires can play it.
Yep.
And vampires puts counters on cards. There are a lot of,
Oh, yeah.
Cordial Vampire, one of the Sorens, etc. Soldiers can play it,
Yep.
which also puts counters on. We
Yeah,
saw that with
definitely
Siege
does.
Veteran and some of the other cards. And then the most real of the 3, apologies, counters. Just like green.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, green-white counters playing this card.
Anybody playing Gavity Township these days?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a Noel Robin out there activating a Gavity Township.
Just like, ooh, I like this one.
Yeah.
All right, on. All right, let's talk about one of the big marquee cards of the set. Wheeler, tell us about Elish Norn.
Elish Norn, full stop. 2/2 white for a 3/5 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. It has Vigilance, and whenever a source an opponent controls would deal damage to you or a permanent you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay a generic.
That applies to so many things.
Yes.
Like combat damage to creatures, even if they block, not just hitting you. Like, it's absurd.
Yeah. And then there's an activated ability of pay 2 and a white, sacrifice 3 other creatures, exile Elish Norn, and then return to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activated only as a sorcery. And it turns into the Argent Etchings, which is a saga. Chapter 1, you incubate 2 5 times, then transform all incubator tokens you control. Incubate means that you create an artifact token and put N +1/+1 counters on it. And then the tokens have an activated ability of paying 2 generic to transform them into 0/0 artifact creature tokens. So effectively, this makes 5 2/2s. Chapter 2, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike until end of turn. Great. Chapter 3, destroy all other permanents except for artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians. Then you exile the Ardent Etchings and return it to the battlefield. It comes back as Elish Norn.
And then you can do it again and rinse and repeat. That's probably the coolest part of this cycle, is after the saga ends, it turns back into the creature, so you can do it again if the conditions are right.
So not to spoil my take on these cards, but this is the only one that I don't hate. And part of that is because I'm really struggling with this card. It's obviously good.
Yes, yeah.
And it has so many words on it.
Yep.
All of them positive. The negative, obviously, 4-mana legend without an ETB, Caracas exists. And because you can only use this as a sorcery, it also gets mucked if you try to do it and they just
mega
Caracas
mucked.
it.
Yeah.
So Caracas is your number 1 issue. But that's okay. We can get past that. Not everybody has it. It's not 2016. Everything else is so good.
Yes. Yes.
It just requires a bit of setup, but that setup then leads you to win the game.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know.
I am right there with you on all 5 of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, the hoops you have to jump through on some make them stone unplayable. And it's undisputable that if you get there, yeah, you win. But like, we play an extremely fast format. The chances of somebody giving you the time or not having some disruption or answer for you while you do it.
Yeah. I mean, Urabrask is also a 4-drop, but this is a 4-drop that survives Flame Slash, and the theme, what it asks of you, can more naturally happen from playing Magic the Gathering. So I think you want to play in a deck that can produce creature tokens, whether that is aristocrats or a go wide mono white like token style deck, or just like green X tokens, green white tokens. Something like that. It also does produce a lot of artifacts, which is kind of interesting. North 100 here, we're known for maybe not the most hottest like pog at the camera takes on every cards, because we would rather help people with the format than go like, I can't believe they did this.
Top 10 card.
Yeah, but like, this is a card where it's not the best thing to say, you're going to have to play it. I'm going to have to play it. You're going to have to try it out. If you have a white deck that can generate creatures, give this card a shot. It's good. All the words are good. It's just, is it going to line up?
Yeah.
Like, it might be able to brute force its way into inclusion.
Yeah.
where you just play it, and then that other side is like, it maybe pops up, maybe it doesn't, and you just...
I mean, that's the hardest thing about all these cards is obviously you can't evaluate it in isolation. You can't just ignore the backside. But it'd be really cool if the front face was good enough to play on its own.
Yes.
That's the thing. And honestly, the front face to this screams almost like a prison deck, right? Like, don't attack me. All right, and give myself enough time to set up my planeswalkers, to set up my lock pieces or something like that.
Yeah.
It's going to act as a 5-mana artifact creature where only one creature can attack or block each combat.
Silent Arbiter.
Right? Like that sort of thing. Like this is a wall. This is not a win condition.
Yeah.
But you look at the backside, it's like, nah, this is actually your win condition. Welcome to a build your own overrun.
Yeah.
And maybe that's fine too.
It costs 4 mana.
Yeah.
It doesn't say play 3 cards in one turn or you have 8 cards in hand or whatever.
Like, I wouldn't mind playing this right after Moat or something, It's just like, great, I got my Moat down, and now you also can't chip away with me with flyers because I might kill you or I'll like attrition your mana out, but I don't know.
Don't feel like an idiot if you want to play this
card.
No,
absolutely not. Yeah. I also see somebody killing me, absolutely.
Yeah.
And not even mean like, oh, you're playing Elishnorn? I'd be like, oh, awesome, yeah. I don't know. Tell us what you think, please. But,
you do the set review for us.
Yeah. Let's move on to Elspeth's Smite, the thing made to kill Elishnorn. This is a 1-mana instant spell for a single white pip. Deal 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it. This is very interesting. They've made Sunlance into an instance, but it's a lot more restrictive. But it also exiles a creature. So I think I'm medium at best on this card, and that's only specifically because white already has the best removal in the game. And I don't know if you need an 8th removal spell in white, and if you're looking for this one in particular. Is my take. I think it's clean and it's efficient, but I think I'd rather just splash red for Bolt over playing this.
It's the best this effect has ever been.
Yes.
And 3 is a lot large. Normally these deal 2.
Yeah.
And maybe have a little add-on. But this is 3 and it's exiled.
Yeah.
And like maybe...
That's what the card says. I don't know.
But like... No. I mean, half of our job is just reading the card.
Would you play this over Harm's Way?
I don't see this as a mono-white card.
Really?
Yeah,
because as soon as I'm splashing another color, I'm never playing this.
I see this as blue-white control. That's the one home I want to see. Control?
Yeah. I see this in blue-white tempo.
Or
if you're really fighting for the board, if you're looking for combat tricks, if you're looking to muck them and you've got first strike or something to really change the combat math, maybe.
So tempo kind of cares about using its removal. I mean, we don't have to have time to explain tempo.
Yeah.
But tempo uses its removal with context to whether or not they are a control deck or operating as an aggro deck.
Fair.
And so
fair.
that's where the restriction of this card might make it a bit muddy. If I'm playing blue-white control and I just want to sequence my spells or my lands in such a way that I can leave open 1 mana and fire off something that's attacking me, which is all I really want to do is just preserve my life total, then I'm okay with this. Especially as blue-white control players are cutting cards like Declaration in Stone, and some of the more expensive kind of white removal spells.
Like the classic sorcery removal spells.
Yeah, it kills Ragavan, and you know what? That's okay. That's
you know what? Yeah, if it deals with the monkey, it's probably worth a consideration. That's very fair, honestly.
Great.
All right. Next up, Wheeler.
Guardian of Girapur. 2 and a white for a 3/3 flying angel. When it ETBs, you exile up to 1 other target creature or artifact you control and return to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this pulls a weird Flicker Wisp / Charming Prince kind of role. Flicker Wisp being able to exile any permanent that any player controls. Charming Prince only exiling your creature, but the timing kind of lines up. This has Ancient Tomb mana. It's also a 3/3 flyer, which is pretty big. That's pretty impressive. but you lose the ability to say nice ensnaring bridge, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Nice Murktide Regent that's blocking everything that has a bajillion counters on it. What if I make it a 3/3?
This is in comparison to
Flicker Wisp.
Specifically, yeah.
And then if you want a Charming Prince style of effect, like Charming Prince just slides in at being cheaper. 2 is a lot cheaper than 3 by 1 exactly. And then the body of it doesn't really matter except for when it matters how small it is because you're using Recruiter of the Guard or Imperial Recruiter. So I think that this card has a lot of positives, but none of them really have a home. Like, I don't want this for a Blink deck. I don't really want this for a Death and Taxes deck. And I don't even want this for the, like, more grindy white mid-range decks we were talking about. So this is just a product of, like, this is what a good card in 2023 looks like that just doesn't show up. It's like, great. If this card was printed 10 years ago, I'd be losing my mind.
God, yeah.
But have you read Oko?
All right, let's introduce the first invasion, the invasion of Gobakon? Gobakon, and I'd like to apologize to Wheeler, who is now being cropped on. Now, to be fair, of all the things to, upstage you, a new card type isn't bad.
Interesting choice of words, Serge. But,
All right, introducing a Battle Siege. So the way sieges work, as they enter the battlefield, you don't gift it to your opponent, you still control it, but you you place it for them, and then your job is to try and kill your own battle, much like a planeswalker. You attack it and you take away defense counters, and then your opponent can choose to protect it. And if they don't, then it transforms. So in this particular case, the front face says, when it enters the battlefield, look at the target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains in exile, its owner may play it, but it costs 2 more generic to cast. And then, if you ever defeat the battle, it turns into the Light Shield Array, which is an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn, and then you can sacrifice the array. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Now, when I was talking about Elesh Norn, I was talking about how you can't necessarily evaluate the card without looking at both sides.
Yeah.
And how both sides are powerful, but you kind of wish each side was kind of powerful on its own.
Yeah.
For this card in particular, neither side is particularly exciting, but together I like it a lot.
Yes.
So on the front face, it does an imitation of, what was the SVDBD? Oh, God. What's his name?
Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa.
Okay. And
PVDDR.
PVDDR.
And it's Elite Spellbinder.
Yeah, it does an Elite Spellbinder sort of thing.
Yep.
It sort of tempos them out. It gives you a turn, perfect information what they have, and while they don't discard it, it really tempos them, which is a powerful effect.
Yep.
And I would not want to play that by itself. And then if you remove all the defense counters, you have to spend 3 combat damage that you would put anywhere else to flip it.
Well, just for a rules thing, for clarification, it can be non-combat damage removing defense counters
Vampire
as well.
Hexmage or something like that. Or
Hexmage, Lightning Bolt, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Basically everything except for destroying a battle.
Sure.
Destroying a battle, destroys it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the opposite side of this is also very strong. Now, unfortunately, it's at the beginning of the end step. You put the +1/+1 counter, so it doesn't work as an anthem. It's a sliff effect as opposed to a boost effect. And anything that gives all your creatures indestructible end of turn, very, very, very strong.
And hexproof. Wow.
And hexproof. Oh, yeah. Now, the problem here, and this is probably something we're going to have to evaluate for all the battles, is it worth it in our format to take a turn off to flip these? I'm actually really curious to hear your thoughts.
So there's a concept that Magic players, new and old, really struggle with, which is investing in your future. Yeah, a lot of Magic.
I'd gladly give you 2 cookies tomorrow if you give me 1 today.
Yes. Or I can give you 1 marshmallow now.
Yeah, or 2 tomorrow. Yeah.
And people go like, well, I need the marshmallow.
But I need that marshmallow now.
Yeah. So battles are kind of interesting because there are different ways that you can interact with them as they are permanents. Different, like you can play it early, let it sit, and then transform it when you're able to. It depends on the archetype, whether or not they are willing to trade life points effectively. People look at it and go like, well, if I just attacked them for 3, I would have won. And it's like, okay, but think about the resources you may have had to expend to get to that point and stuff. So that's tricky. And that might be reflected in our evaluation on some of these cards. That said, we're starting off with a good one that's relatively straightforward, I think, in that this is great. I think this card's great. Like you said, annoying buildy up front, really good speed bump for like a white or a white X deck to utilize. Death and Taxes, contrary to the Isamaru that's attacking you on turn 2, isn't looking to kill you immediately. That it is a deck that can just let the game go along because you have the tools to deal with anything. So if you have to give your opponent effectively 3 life points or whatever by not attacking them and attacking the battle, great. That's fine. You'll do that. And then you just get that extra layer of protection, the Brave the Elements style card.
Yeah, or the whatever that spirit's called that does a similar thing.
Oh, the Guardian of yes.
Yeah, sacrifice it to give your team indestructible.
Oh, Selfless Spirit. No, sorry. I was thinking of the phasing one.
No.
But yeah, the cards that are make it impossible to deal with. Plus the little juice of the counters, like you said, you don't get it on the attack. But
yeah, that just kind of feels like the gravy on top, right?
Right. If you treated it as though when it flipped, you put counters on everything and then it also protected, that's pretty appealing. Like, it's not always going to work that way because you'll play a creature on the turn after or whatever. But like, I think there are ways to look at this card and kind of reword it in your head, related to how the games play out.
Yeah, because if you kill it with combat damage from creatures, those creatures get the plus
they
and
get
plus
bigger.
1. Exactly, right? Yeah.
Also, Luris. This is a 2 mana permanent.
Yeah.
You can play this off Luris, strip their hand, clock it, immediately flip it to this, sack it to protect your team and your Luris, and then replay it.
Can we go back to the front face, James? I just want to see the specific wording on the front face where even if you've transformed this to the Light Shield array, does it still, for as long as it remains exiled? Yeah, I mean, that card costs 2 more, even if this leaves, if this gets blown up, if it gets flipped. I like it even more after that thought.
Yeah, this one's great. I think this one's great.
All right. Why don't you bring us to the next card?
This one's great. Knight Errant of Eos. 4 and a white for a 4/4 human knight with Convoke. If you're not familiar with Convoke, it's a returning mechanic. Creatures can help pay for casting spells, either reducing the cost of that spell by 1 generic or 1 of its color by tapping it. So you tap it to help play the spells. When Knight Errant of Eos enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You reveal up to 2 cards with mana value X or less from among them, where X is the number of creatures that Convoke Knight Errant of Eos. Put the revealed cards into your hand and then shuffle. That's kind of weird wording at the end, but you basically just put cards in your deck and then, or from your deck into your hand, and then you shuffle. I'm a big fan of this card. I'm a big fan of this card in green-white or mono-white.
I'm fascinated to hear why.
Okay. So there's a concept Magic players struggle with called investing in your future.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Convoke is another one of those, but it's a bit more tricky.
Yeah, because like obviously instant speed Convoke, great.
Yeah.
Right? The tutors, a lot of the cast spells, I have no problem with that thought. But taking a turn off to cast this in the type of deck that wants to play this, I have a hard time understanding that.
So you, again, for a deck that isn't necessarily rushed to kill the opponent, that has the tools to deal with whatever, or has the cards to protect your own creatures, if we're in green-white especially, taking a turn off to develop your board while also putting cards into your hand, because if you Convoke 3 with this card, you're only playing 2 mana, tapping 3 creatures, which is a lot, but you shift that to tap 2 creatures.
If you're paying mana dorks or whatever, right?
Yeah,
like green-white mana dorks. Okay.
It's still it's going to be relatively easy to get this card out.
Sure.
Looking at the top 6 and drawing 2 cards.
Yeah.
Like, this is like a collected company you can actually play in our format.
Oh my God.
Right?
Wow, poor Coco.
It comes with a 4/4 body, which is pretty threatening.
Yeah.
And there's a comparable card called Venerated Loxodon.
I literally wanted to ask about that because I think that card's unplayable.
It's very niche,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't recommend that particular build.
But like that's got to be the first comparison that people have. So
Yes.
Venerated Loxodon, similar casting cost, similar body. Each creature that you tap to convoke gets a +1/+1 counter.
Right.
So you take a turn off to invest in your future.
So you invest in the board by creating a 4/4, and also invest in all the creatures to make them bigger. So
Yeah.
you build to the board, and the benefit is that you build to the board. So that's more of the same. It's like putting whipped cream on the top of your whipped cream.
Sure.
Right? On a Sunday. This sounded better in my head.
Yeah.
This one you build to the board, and then also they have to deal with this 4/4. And then they also just have to deal with the one or two cards that you've drawn.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I like this, and I mean, this card is made for me, and that it's just a white value creature.
Oh, I
here.
can absolutely see you casting this and killing me with it.
Oh, imagine if I played this and ruin your evening.
That's exactly the deck I'm worried about you doing it in, right? A deck that has lots of time and doesn't do anything else.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. All right, next up, we have the Phyrexian Censor. This is a 3-mana 3/3 Phyrexian Wizard for 2 and a white. Ancient Tomb. Each player can't cast more than one non-Phyrexian spell each turn. Non-Phyrexian creatures enter the battlefield tapped. This is basically just a D&T sort of card. This is the sort of card that is going to be miserable to play against. Obviously, it has a non-bow with your own team, but your D&T, you don't care. You play around that. Things like Aether Vial can get around this. And also, if you're the deck dictating the pace, symmetrical downsides aren't symmetrical. You leverage that to your side. I don't think this is relevant in any other deck than that, but you probably want to play it in that.
Just D&T, but D&T.
Yeah. All right, next up.
Seal from Existence. 1 white for an enchantment with Ward 3. When Seal from Existence enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until this leaves play. Ward 3 is so much. Christ.
Yeah. How miserable is that?
Yeah. So I actually really like this card.
I do too.
Two people that have tapped Sarah Sanctum.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
You're like, I miss Oblivion Ring and Enchantress.
So the way that most people deal with enchantments in our format is through Knight of Autumn or Kasali Pride Mage style of effects. Basically, they have to make an initial investment, and then they get the Naturalize effect or whatever as a bonus. Nice 6-mana Knight of Autumn, idiot.
Yeah. Or 7, because they're going to Green Sun for most of the time, right?
Yeah.
You know?
So if this hits play, pretty difficult to get off the board. There are some spots where Abrupt Decay still mucks this because it can't be countered and Ward actually counters the ability. That's a niche-ish scenario. But if you get blown up, it's not my fault. I warned you.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat in blue-white decks like blue-white control. I know I just said they're cutting the more expensive removal, but the blue-white control decks that play like Enlightened Tutor for a back to basics or a Seal from Existence, Enchantress, which has gotten a bit of a glow up in the past couple of years.
It really has.
Yeah, this slides into that. That's good. That's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good for that.
Let's talk about our final white card, Me of Salvation. Surge of Salvation is a 1-mana instant for a single white pip. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Prevent all damage that black and or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. This is another one of probably a long list of white spells that protect your creatures. If you are playing... Did D&T even care about effects like this anymore?
Brave the Elements.
Brave the Elements?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's 2 similar effects. One is Brave the Elements, and the other is Silence. When you're trying to do something unfair on your side and hoping that your opponent doesn't muck you.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you are playing a deck and you need more of those effects, you look at this card. And if you're just trying to do something mid-range or something fair and you think maybe you'll use this as a combat trick to prevent your turn, there's probably better cards to do. I don't necessarily hate this. I think this is pretty narrow, and that's maybe what you're looking to do.
I agree with that thought. The add-on I want to give is that decks aren't looking for additional copies of this card, sort of thing.
Yes.
Like D&T loves Brave the Elements, but also because it can push damage.
Yeah.
Protection is just not a real keyword. And like silences, storm decks, especially Breach Storm decks.
combo or something like that. Something that wants to, if this resolves, I win.
Yeah, they have to get through Silence, Orm's Chant, and Abeyance, and those are all more proactive spells as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I feel like we'll talk about this a lot in the set review of like, this card is certainly a 2023 card.
Yeah.
But we kind of want the broken mistake cards more than this.
All right. Take away the blue cards, friend.
Blue cards, don't mind if I do. Change the equation. 1 in a blue for an instant. Choose one. Counter target spell with mana value 2 or less. Or counter target red or green spell with mana value 6 or less. This is kind of like a weird prohibit from Invasion. Good job, Ben. Pull a card that's 23 years old. That'll work with the kids. The only spot that I could see this is if like the Canlander year end.
I was about to say a tournament deck. If you know the meta.
If you've got the sickest of reads and you want to muck someone's Minsk and Boo Timeless Heroes, or you are just worried about Gruul monsters, you probably still shouldn't play this card. There are better things to do. But I mean, that's not...
As far as hosers go, this isn't dead in every other matchup.
And as two Canadians, we know about hosers.
Oh, thing or two about hosers, eh?
Oh, yeah, bud. It's all right. I think I would just prefer, like, this slot is always just... If I'm flexing a slot for a targeted meta, I would just play a removal spell over this, or an additional like board-based kind of threat. And then like if I'm just wanting more counter magic, there's so many.
I do like that it's hard counter instead of soft.
Yes.
But
fair.
Yeah, this is
Yep.
Next up, we have the Chrome Host Seed Shark, which is just fun to say. It's got good mouthfeel. This is a 3-mana 2/4 Phyrexian Shark for 2 and a blue. It has flying, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. And we talked about what incubate does earlier.
Yep.
All right. 2 things. 1, I don't think making incubate tokens is particularly powerful. I think they're slow by themselves and they don't do anything. But I think any card that every time you cast a non-creature spell makes an artifact is busto.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think is very significant for this deck, is the fact that it just floods the board with artifacts, because our format has Academy and Ancient Tombs or whatever. Sorry.
Oh, you were like building up. I'm like, it is Ancient Tomb, man. He's going for it.
But I forgot. I actually forgot the word of Academy for a second there, and I panicked, and I was like, because it has Academy, which is so busto. And we've been talking about these Tinker decks lately, these Goblin Tinkerer decks, and anything that floods the board with artifacts is going to be very, very, very strong.
So there's a concept that Magic players often struggle with called investing in your future, which I actually think incubate tokens do so pretty reasonably.
Sure.
There's not as many sweepers running around, which is their real strength.
Yes.
And that they aren't creatures until you invest the mana.
Think of that for prison decks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they do dodge one other kind of card type that has popped up more, which is creature-based removal or cheaper sorcery-based removal.
Yeah.
So like Strangle is a good one. The 1 red deal 3 to a creature or planeswalker. Bloodchief's Thirst is another good one.
Yeah.
So the incubator tokens have a certain aspect to them that can get around that. Like you said, they're artifacts, so I'm happy. Mana value. We received a couple of these cards in the recent Innistrad sets with like Poppet Stitcher and Smoldering Egg, the cards that care about you casting non-creature. But like Smoldering Egg says how much mana you spend. If I Force of Will with this card in play, I get a 5/5.
I mean, it's similar to Shark Typhoon, and they're both sharks, and the art of this, it's kind of looking like it's a shark in front of a tornado. Like there's sort of a reference to it.
Oh my God, you're right.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, I could see this even being like they've corrupted the sharks from the Shark Typhoon, and that's what it's doing. It's making the incubate tokens.
2/4 flyers as well. Like that's a body. You can't bolt this bad boy.
So let's talk about what's playing this though. And I don't I don't know. Like, do the artifact decks want this over Saheeli or in redundancy with Saheeli or something like that? Like, that's the issue. It's got a lot of things going for it, and obviously it's powerful, but I don't know where I would play it.
Yeah, there are some builds of the artifact decks that go deeper. Saheeli and Psymaster Thopterist are the biggest ones.
Yep.
But there are some builds that dip into and Third Path Iconoclast. That card is wild.
This and Urza are absurd. You're just pumping more artifacts onto the board, and your constructs are getting huge.
Yeah,
right?
I think just making constructs is one of the best things that you can do in 2023 Magic. And this helps that, and this can go into that style of deck, and it's resilient enough that it's not going to get mucked by a lightning bolt. So I think that this card, I'll give this card a test. I think that this card is likely to land in a spot that is. It's obviously not as good as Sai or Saheeli in just making a raw, like an army that can immediately do something and then provide card value. Those cards both generate some value as well. But it's better than something like Mirrodin Besieged, you know?
I mean, it synergizes with those, you know, that's who it's good. That's who it parties with, even if it's, you know.
And like you said, even if you cast 0-mana artifacts like looping Black Lotus or like Mishra's Bauble or whatever, you're still making an artifact that you don't necessarily have to
just set it aside and it's there, just accruing value for you.
Yep. And it just adds to your academy.
Right. All right, talk about the new invitational card here.
Fairy Mastermind. 1 in a blue for a 2/1 flash flyer. It's a fairy rogue. Whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. And then you pay 3 in a blue. Activated ability, each player draws a card. I don't know how often I'm using that final ability, but the floor on this card is it's a 2-mana flash flyer with 2 power that has another ability.
Oh my god.
And that's pretty good for tempo decks.
Yep, it's absurd. Kill somebody in response to their Thoracle. Ooh.
I do like that. I do like that.
Right?
I have played against the Thoracle deck every Highlander night for the past 2 months.
Yeah. That's just the gravy on top, right? Like, this card is good enough without it, and suddenly your Thoracle player is like, flash Thoracle. You're like, flash in the Fairy Mastermind. You're like, wait, no!
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk about the fact that it's a fairy. Because I always want to play that stupid sprite.
Spellstutter sprite.
The Spellstutter sprite that when it ETBs, you counter a spell equal to the number of fairies you control. Right? Like, you're like, any good flash fairy, I'm like, oh, maybe I can finally play the Spellstutter sprite. And you're like, no, you can't. But still, my dreams, my hopes and dreams, you know?
Yeah. I don't mind Spellstutter sprite. It just doesn't have a great home.
It really doesn't. Is it equal to or less than?
Equal to or less than.
That's not bad. Yeah, you're like hoping to get people with mocks and whatever, but it's fine. All right, move over, Wheeler. It's time for another invasion.
Oh no, I'm getting stepped on.
The invasion of Segovia. 3-mana battle siege with 4 defense counters. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 blue Kraken creature tokens with trample. But wait, it transforms into Cetus. Kaitos, Sea Tyrant of Segovia. Kaitos is a 3/3 legendary serpent. Non-creature spells you have Convoke. And at the beginning of your end step, untap up to 4 target creatures. I'm kind of medium on this one.
I am too.
Yeah.
However, opposition.
Only you would think of an opposition card. Yeah, front face gives you 2 bodies. Opposition decks love bodies. And then the back side means you could, have a bunch of stuff untapped. You can swing with them. You can tap them to convoke and get other spells out, and then untap to tap them all down at the beginning.
Non-creature spells you cast have convoke is a really dangerous line of text as well. Very mana efficient.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every effect that lets you untap at your end step has also been unbelievably oppressive. With Courser of Crucifix, with what was that enchantment? That 4 green enchantment?
Awakening?
No, it was untap all your lands at your end step, and a lot of people are doing unfair stuff.
Oh, Wilderness Reclamation.
Wilderness Reclamation, right? Yeah. Like those. One of the few cards banned in Commander is Courser of Crucifix, right? Like any of these effects that let
Prophet of Crucifix.
Pardon me. Prophet of Crucifix. Like, those effects are always powerfully unfair. So I look at this and I think to myself, it's got unfair stuff on it. I just, ugh.
I would play this at a weekly or on a Friday night paper fight, mostly to show it off. But yeah, I don't know if you love opposition strats like the blue-green opposition or Jeskai opposition, then yeah, maybe give this a whirl. That's another deck that doesn't mind trading in some damage if it means it can lock its opponent out of ever casting another spell. Yeah.
But yeah, your creatures are so bad in that deck. How are you ever doing 4 damage to flip this?
This makes 2 1/1s.
Yeah.
With trample.
All right, cool. All right, talk about another Praetor.
Praetor. Oh, I'm converting you. Jin Gataxius. 3 blue for a 5/5 legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor, with Ward 2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, draw a card. Then pay 3 and a blue, exile Jin Gataxius, and return to the battlefield transform under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if you have 7 or more cards in hand.
Okay.
And it turns into the Great Synthesis. A saga with Chapter 1. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size for as long as you control the Great Synthesis. Number 2. Return all non-Phyrexian creatures to their owner's hands. And Chapter 3, you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana cost, exile the Great Synthesis, return to the battlefield, and it's transformed. My only question, Serge, is if you're playing this, who's your commander? just double checking. Who's your commander? Probably Jin. Yeah.
I mean, tough but fair. That's so many hoops to jump through.
That's a 7. Okay.
7 cards in hand after you cast a 5-drop, and you have to pay, what, 7 to flip it too?
If you really want to include a bad 5 blue mana mythic in your deck that draws you a bunch of cards, play Imarith from AFR or Dragonlord Ojutai. There are just better options than this kind of card.
Go up to 6, play a Consecrated Sphinx.
Yeah. But that doesn't have Ward 2. And I can't turn it into a saga that wins the game and all, just I can't hit the serotonin button.
Yeah,
but
I cut you off. I apologize.
No. This card's not worth it.
Yeah. But of course, this is we're talking about all of them because
if we didn't.
Yeah. It's like 2 things you may have noticed if you're a long-time viewer. We talk about every planeswalker.
Yep.
And we talk about every sort of like signpost,
marquee.
Yeah.
Mythic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could say it's a little moment of truth. It's a 2-mana instant.
You could.
For 1 and a blue, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand, 1 into your graveyard, and 1 on the bottom of your library. This is not a new effect. We've seen this quite a few times. This is at instant. That's pretty cool. And this is only in blue, because Splendid Reclamation does something similar, except it's... No. Splendid Reclamation is 1 into exile that you can play, 1 into your hand, 1 on the bottom.
Expressive iteration.
Pardon me.
Yeah. This is like an amalgamation of all of the like telling time, strat plannings, anticipates. You'll play this because you play the other ones.
Yeah. It is a perfectly fine. I mean, it almost lets you draw 2 in the right deck because putting a card into your graveyard is quite powerful.
Yeah, I guess that's unfair. In that, like, I would try this in Reanimator, whereas Reanimator isn't playing like a telling time. I mean, Storm isn't playing telling time either.
Yep.
Those cards have all been outmodded by the stuff that we managed to mumble out. But
if you're playing green, if you're playing like lands, I don't hate this either. Lands is another deck that really takes advantage of its graveyard.
Just play mulch.
Play mulch. Yeah. As soon as I said that, I'm like, you could just mulch.
You could just mulch, my dude.
All right, let's move on.
Rona, Herald of Invasion. 1 in a blue, it's a legendary creature, human wizard. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap Rona. Tap to draw a card and then discard a card. And it's a 1/3. But wait, there's more because this is a set in 2023. It has an activated ability of pay 5 and a Phyrexian black. Transform Rona. Activate only as a sorcery. Rona turns into Rona, Tolarian Obliterator, a 5/5 trample, Phyrexian wizard. It's a legend. Whenever a source deals damage to Rona, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land card, you may put it into play under your control. Otherwise, you may cast it without paying its mana cost.
That's
so I've been playing a lot of Reanimator, as I'm sure people that have watched North 100 Showdown will see. And that deck doesn't play Merfolk Looter proper, but it has moved up to play cards, of course, Jace Vryn's Prodigy or Vohar. from Dominaria United as looters that can also do another thing. That other thing, admittedly, is cast a reanimation spell that got milled. But I don't know. That is a deck that will sometimes spin its wheels a lot, and it needs looters. It's nice to have some amount of looters, especially a 1/3.
The 1/3. Yeah, I was going to talk about
1/3 is pretty difficult to get
Every
through.
looter is terrible. It's like a 1/1 or a 0/1.
Yep.
And you're just like, man, I need this as a resource. I can't really afford to block with it. I mean,
Yeah, so I'll give this a shot in Reanimator decks. There are some goofy combos that you can use with this card, and like Mox Amber, and you get like Retraction Helix and whatnot. But the more realistic, grounded stuff is just Reanimator.
yeah. All right, the final blue card we're going to talk about is the Saiba Cryptomancer. This is a 2-mana 0/1 Moonfolk Ninja for 1 and a blue. It has Flash and backup 1. And the backup ability is Hexproof. So this flashes into play, gives itself Hexproof, or it's a 1/1 with Hexproof, which is kind of cool if you're looking for a Boggles-ish effect.
1/2.
Pardon me, it's a 1/2, right? Or you can flash it in to save one of your creatures, which is kind of cool. I like this a medium amount. I don't think this is a slam dunk, but there are a lot of decks that leverage flash in a lot of interesting ways. I think I like this more as a way to save your own threats than building like an all-in Boggles style deck.
Don't want to have any fun. You don't want to slap an ethereal armor on this bad boy?
You like that? No.
So my thoughts.
Yeah.
Boggles. Hexproof, baby. Let's go.
Wait, so hold on. Pre-tours and Boogles?
Oh, no, sorry. No, I wasn't trying to call you out on pronunciation. But I did. Yeah. Bogle.
What did I say? Boggle?
You said everybody says Boggle.
Bogle?
Bogle.
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 What's your source?
I made it up. No, because it's not spelt like Boggle. We have a spelling for Boggle.
So all right, interesting. You're ignoring the flash. You like the Hexproof.
I think the hex, because we don't have many cheap Hexproof.
We really don't.
It's like the last new one that was printed was from Journey to Nyx. Or like Glade Cover Scout, right? So more density for that deck.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you there. Yeah, okay.
But here's something you might be more interested in. If we're talking about like a version of that list that looks to draw influence from the versions that see play in like Pioneer or Modern,
We're talking about Boggle still, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're talking Boggles.
Boggles, sure.
Is that you can either have this be your hexproof card that you build up on with Flash, which is pretty nice, or you can give your SRAM, your Core Spirit Dancer, your Light Paws hexproof to save them.
Yep.
And it plays around Liliana so well. Liliana the Veil, I have a story. I was going to say famous story. I think I've told it once. I have a story against Allison where I was on Boggles and I conceded to a turn 2 Liliana the Veil. No questions asked. And this is a card that just having an additional flash creature that either will be the one that holds the banner or will be able to give something hexproof, and then you sacrifice this body to the Liliana sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you've actually kind of sold me on like Bant Sanctum Stomping now.
Yes.
As a way to save like your Setessan Champion or something like that.
Yep.
Like, oh my god.
Yep. Just play all these cheap creatures, play all these Curious Obsessions and Curiosities and Ethereal Armors.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
Because I think, and maybe this is where a lot of people go to, I think I hyperfixated on Flash and the word ninja, where you have to be sneaky with it and you have to play around that. You're like, I'm going to get him, because we've talked about this before. Highlander players notoriously are terrible at playing around combat tricks.
Yep.
Right? You're like, I got you.
Gore Clan Rampager sees play in a tier 1 deck. Kill their thing before combat.
Every time. Yeah.
I'm begging you.
Yeah, don't wait with that bolt. You will just die.
Oh, I'll just get it when it attacks. What do you mean it's now a 7/7 trample?
Yeah. All right, let's start talking about black cards, Wheeler.
Corrupted Conviction. Single black instant. Additional cost to cast a spell. Sack a creature. Draw 2 cards. This is just a functional reprint of Village Rites.
Yep.
Village Rites is a really good Magic card. We now have 3 of these well, in the their good version, we have Village Rites, this one, and Deadly Dispute, the 2-mana sack a creature or artifact. You draw 2, make a treasure. They don't see play in Aristocrat strategies outside of maybe like a 2-color one, like black-red or black-white. And they're fine, because this is a card, this style of card, you really only want if you are a deck that needs to start drawing cards and has bodies that can throw away. So 2-color Aristocrat style deck, or I don't actually hate these cards in like Rakdos Pyromancer or in the Mardu decks that make a bunch of tokens and have a bunch of like Sedgemoor Witch, Monastery Mentor, Pyromancer style cards. So yeah, it's nice to see another copy of this card.
We got the Hoarding Brood Lord. This is an 8-mana 7/6 dragon for 5 black, black, black. Has Convoke, has Flying, and when it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card. Exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it, and then spells you cast from exile have Convoke. I like this a lot. I like this a lot. I like it not only in Reanimator, which I think is pretty, but also in like a grindy, recurring nightmare, like sort of an Abzan deck that's playing creatures. Like you could just cast it in that deck.
Yeah, I have a visual of me sitting across from you at a showdown.
Yeah.
Where you're like, this is really cool. And you've convoked like a Wall of Blossoms and a Night of Autumn, and you're just like tutoring Saw in half, and then Saw in halving this to get 2 other cards.
Oh,
and I'm just sitting there like, oh, another land. Okay. Like, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
This card is phenomenal. It is so easy to get in play.
Yeah.
In multiple ways. Play it in your unfair decks.
The only awkward part with the Reanimator is that Reanimator decks look for more non-legendary cards.
Yeah.
And it plays Runescarred Demon, which
Yep.
is very close to this.
Yep.
But the line of put another big idiot into your hand that you can discard and then reanimate is lost, but it's a Demotic Tutor. You probably have. Just get Entomb. You're fine. Don't worry about it. You're overthinking it.
What's up next?
Infernal Sovereign. Speaking of overthinking, 4 black and a black for a 6/6 demon. This is from maybe not the Commander deck, but the Commander packs. It's not in the main set. That's all you need to know. So 6 mana 6/6 flying trample. Skip your draw step. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell, you draw a card and lose a life. So this is degenerate as all hell.
Oh my god, it's so good.
It's yeah, there's the garbage decks, garbage platter, garbage plate, the like Reanimator, Tin Finsy, Storm Hybrid. I'd be interested in trying this out because again, non-legendary reanimation target in that kind of deck, which might be a downside because that deck actually gets access to Goryo's Vengeance, but we're neither here nor there. There's a deck called Yawgmoth's Jacuzzi, or Jacuzzi on Commission, which is like a fast bond storm deck that has a Reanimator package. All these decks have won tournaments. It's okay. We can talk about
Sure.
and I think it slides into there. I'm not playing this in like a big black, like fair deck. Skip your draw step makes me sick. What do you mean I don't get to take a game action?
You've been burnt by necromancy too many, not necromancy, necropotence too many times.
Not me. I'm smart enough to never play that card in this format. But I've been burned by Yogg Bargain.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
You know what I love about this card? My Horn of Greed can kill my opponents now.
Yeah. Oh.
Right? Like, oh my god, that card is already so busted.
Whenever you play a land,
Yeah.
you draw a card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
and look, we're already playing so many different ways to mitigate the downside of a fast bond. Like if you have a Courser of Krufix and this and like fast bond in play, oh my god.
You just go off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you know what? Oh my god, your Jaddy offshoot gets better because of this card. And
My Grazing Gladeheart?
great. This actually okay. Yeah, this makes
My
Grazing-
Antelope is best friends with this demon.
Serge is gonna run home and start kissing his retreat to Kazan.
Yeah, they got matching horns. Oh. Anything else you want
Nope.
to say?
What's next?
All right. The final card we're going to talk about in black today is Shieldred. All right, buckle up. I got a lot to say here. 5 mana 4/5 legendary Phyrexian Praetor for 3 black has Menace. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. Now, 4 and a black, exile Shieldred. return it to the battlefield transformed. Activate this only as a sorcery and only if an opponent has 8 or more cards on the graveyard. On the opposite side, we have the True Scriptures, which is a saga. Chapter 1. For each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. 2. Each opponent discards 3 cards, then mills 3 cards. And then Chapter 3. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, then exile the True Scriptures, and it turns back into Sheodred, at which point, if they have any creatures left, they sacrifice another one or a planeswalker. Once again, I just think this is too expensive. I think this is way too expensive. What's nice about this card is it does affect the board as soon as it enters the battlefield, which is something that Elesh Norn and Jin Kataxis didn't do. So if they bounce it with Karakas, that's kind of great. It does say non-token, which for the most part is kind of an upside, but it's kind of awkward that it doesn't kill
Merit Life.
Yeah, one of the few ways to deal with that. I mean, it is nice that it deals with a Planeswalker. So like as it is by itself on its front face, I'm not feeling too awkward about this card.
It's nice that it transforms by your opponent having played Magic with you.
Yeah.
And you're likely an attrition deck.
Yeah, and like, look, this is a format with every fetch land. A lot of decks do leverage the graveyard, so they are very willing to mill themselves. Like most blue decks are going to play Thought Scour, target themselves. Like 8 cards in a graveyard means that of all the hoops to jump through, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
And the backside is kind of powerful and kind of cool.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
4 or 5 minutes ends the game quickly.
Yeah.
Here's a test I like to see.
Okay.
You are playing a deck that this could go into.
Yeah.
Like you're playing a black deck, and presumably, let's say you're playing like a black X recursion or attrition style deck. And you are about to money match me for $100. Do you include this in your deck?
I probably play Shriekmaw over it.
Yeah. So
right? Like, if I'm honest, if I want to play a 5-mana card that I'm going to recur that's going to kill something repeatedly.
Yeah. So take that, keep that in mind. In that it's not that bad.
Nope.
Like as far as these go, but
you know where I like it? Big black. Like if you're playing if you're playing all the acceleration, Ancient Tomb, you're playing all the 5-mana demons. I don't hate this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's because you're already like 6/5 drops deep, and you're like, yeah, all right.
You've committed to the bit.
Yeah.
What's going one more? Yeah.
It's playable. It's fine. I don't hate it.
I will lose to this card.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Again, a fun thing. I probably won't play it, but I won't be surprised when it kills me. You know.
Yep.
All right, Wheeler, take us home with the final card of the day.
Sword of Once and Future, the final sword.
Is it really?
Yes.
We've done every single other color combination up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
I trust your knowledge to say something with that with authority. Fascinating.
Great.
I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, it's fine. 3 mana to play, 2 to equip, artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from blue and black. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, surveil 2. Then you may cast an instant or sorcery with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into your grave, exiled instead. Do you want to say some things before I'm rude, or can I be rude and then you say things? How do you want to do this?
Let me say it first.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then we'll probably get rid of this. Even I will acknowledge that most of the swords are probably unplayable in our format these days, which makes me very sad. That being said, I might still try this.
The personal growth out of you, Serge.
So if we had to rank all of the swords, I think the undisputed champion is still Sophie, the Sword of Fire and Ice.
Mm-hmm.
And then just behind it, we have Sword of Feast and Famine.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have maybe Light and Shadow and War and Peace.
Yep.
Are probably tied-ish for third.
Yep.
And we don't talk about the rest of them. I don't hate this. I think this is pretty strong, and I think it slots in around third place again, but only for very specific decks. And maybe that's, again, I don't think it can actually be third place if it only goes in very specific decks. But again, sort of Fire and Ice and Light and Shadow are probably the same sort of thing.
You're playing an equipment deck.
Yeah.
And you're fighting me in a money match.
I'm probably not playing this in an equipment deck is the thing. It's you really need to make sure that the deck is slotting in the right spot, right? I like that it's protection from blue and black. That
Yeah.
being said, I'm probably only playing this in like a very aggressive red-black deck that can get value out of its chain lightnings. Again, its lightning bolts, its hand attack. Again, similar to a Dreadhorde Arcanist sort of thing, where you're like,
Sure.
but yeah, again, 5 mana in 2023 is so expensive. All right, Wheeler, your turn.
Oh yeah, it's stone unplayable. Not a chance. Pro blue and black is kind of nice. I like the pro blue more, but yeah, you couldn't pay me to play this card. Yeah, it's just yeah, it's embarrassing. Have some self-respect. Skull Clamp, Shadow Spear, Umezawa's Jite, Cauldra Complete, and then Nettle System Friends go to other stuff. But yeah, do better, chat.
Do you not
I
have
believe in you.
a soft spot in your heart for the swords?
I have a soft spot in my wallet for that $100 I spent on a foil Sophie from Darksteel that I haven't cast for like a decade.
I have masterpiece versions
know,
of the swords. Don't talk to me about spending money on swords.
We have cast a lot of Steel Shapers gifts in our life, right?
God.
And that's fine. It's fine.
So the worst part about this sword in particular is the deck that you'd probably want to play it in is one that has I bonked my microphone, an absolute density of equipment, right? You want to play it in a red-white equipment deck. And this has the fewest targets for its ability, right? Like that's the deck that wants to play all the swords, and this one synergizes with it the least.
Yep.
And that makes me sad.
Yeah. Okay. That's okay. That's okay.
All right, that's going to do it for part 1 of our set review. Hopefully, Nelson will be joining us for part 2, and we'll cover green and red and
multicolored.
Gold. Yeah, multicolored. I wanted to say black, and I was like, that's wrong.
Nope.
To see how it goes. I hope you enjoyed part 1. If there's any cards that you think we missed for this, please let us know in the comments down below, but we'll be back to talk about more of it. As always, a reminder that that everything that we do is brought to you by you with your support of the Patreon at patreon.com/LonelyReadyRun. I've been Serge, joined by the wonderful Wheeler. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.